The suitcase sat on our kitchen table like a tombstone made of leather. Alyssa's favorite Coach bag, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, now packed with everything she thought mattered. I'd been sitting there for 3 hours, waiting, sipping coffee that had gone cold around midnight. "Grant?" Her voice carried that nervous tremor I'd learned to recognize over the past 6 months. "What's going on? Why is my bag—" "Sit down, Alyssa." I didn't look up from the divorce papers spread beside her suitcase. My handwriting looked surprisingly steady, considering my hands had been shaking when I'd filled them out at 2 a.m. She remained standing in the doorway, still wearing that expensive business suit she'd bought for her client meetings, the one that cost more than I made in a week managing logistics at Henderson Freight. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and I watched her eyes dart to the screen. "Expecting someone?" I asked. "Grant, you're scaring me. What's with the papers? What's with my bag?" I finally looked at her. Really looked. The woman I'd married 8 years ago, who used to laugh at my stupid jokes and steal French fries off my plate, now stood there like a stranger caught in headlights. Her makeup was perfect, not a hair out of place, but her eyes held that guilty flutter I'd been pretending not to notice. "Tell me about your situationship, Alyssa." The phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the kitchen tiles. The sound echoed in our suddenly too quiet house. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. Situationship. That's what you called it in your text to Russell last Tuesday. You remember Russell, right? Your friend who's been helping you figure out your feelings?" Her face went pale beneath that expensive foundation. "Grant, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You always were good with words. Better than me, anyway. That's what you used to say when you'd correct my grammar at dinner parties." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 38 years in my lower back. "But here's the thing about words, honey. Sometimes actions speak louder." I walked to our kitchen counter and picked up a manila folder I'd prepared. Inside were printouts of text messages, call logs, credit card statements, and photos. Months of evidence I'd been collecting while pretending everything was normal. "Colin Mercer," I said, opening the folder. "Real estate developer, drives a BMW, lives in that fancy high-rise downtown. The one with the doorman you mentioned when you said you had a client meeting there last month." Alyssa's breathing became shallow. "How did you get this information?" "Turns out when you're married to someone, you have access to a lot of shared accounts. Amazing what you can learn when you actually pay attention." I pulled out a photo I'd taken from across the street 3 weeks ago. Alyssa and Colin, holding hands, walking into his building. "Nice picture, don't you think? I'm getting better with that telephoto lens. Grant, please, let me explain what happened." "What happened is you met someone while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, your car, and that law office administrator certification you're so proud of. What happened is you decided our marriage was inconvenient. What happened is you started planning your exit strategy without bothering to mention it to me." I walked over to where she stood, frozen, and handed her the divorce papers. "What's happening now is you're leaving." She took the papers with trembling hands. "You can't just throw me out. This is my house too." "Actually, I can. See, while you were busy with your situationship, I was busy with paperwork. Turns out the house is in my name. Has been since we bought it. You never wanted the responsibility of a mortgage, remember? You said it would hurt your credit score for other investments. The bank accounts frozen. Well, not frozen exactly. Transferred. To accounts with only my name on them. All legal, all documented. Amazing what you can do with power of attorney forms when your spouse signs them without reading them carefully." Alyssa's eyes widened. "You tricked me." "I protected myself. There's a difference." I walked back to the table and sat down. "Your car is in the driveway. Keys are on the counter. Your clothes are in the suitcase, along with your personal items. Everything else stays here. My jewelry was purchased with joint funds from joint accounts. Technically, it belongs to both of us. I've decided to keep my half. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. This isn't you, Grant. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. You're right, I wasn't. But that was when I thought I was married to someone who loved me. Turns out I was married to someone who was just biding her time until something better came along. Her phone buzzed again from the floor. This time I walked over and picked it up. Colin's name flashed on the screen with a text message. Is everything okay? You said you'd call an hour ago. Your boyfriend's worried, I said, holding up the phone. Maybe you should go reassure him. Alyssa snatched the phone from my hand. Grant, I never meant for it to happen this way. I was going to tell you. When? After you'd moved in with him? After you'd taken half of everything I've worked for? After you'd figured out how to make me the bad guy in this story? It's not like that. Then what's it like, Alyssa? Explain it to me. Help me understand how my wife of 8 years wakes up one day and decides she's in a situationship with another man while she's still married to me. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in months, she had nothing to say. That's what I thought. I pointed toward the door. Your new situation is waiting for you. Don't keep him waiting any longer. Alyssa picked up her suitcase with shaking hands. This isn't over, Grant. I have rights. I'll get a lawyer. Good luck with that. I hope your situationship can afford one, because as of tomorrow morning, your access to our joint credit cards will be officially terminated. She stopped at the kitchen doorway and turned back to me. I loved you once. I know you did. That's what makes this so much worse. After she left, I sat alone in our kitchen for another hour, listening to the silence. The house felt different already, like it was exhaling for the first time in months. I picked up my cold coffee and took a sip, grimacing at the bitter taste. Then I walked down to my basement workshop and pulled out my laptop. Phase 1 was complete. But I wasn't done with Alyssa and her situationship, not by a long shot. Time to show them what complicated really looked like. My workshop in the basement had always been my sanctuary. Power tools, half-finished projects, and a workbench I'd built myself from reclaimed wood. Alyssa used to call it my man cave, with that condescending tone she'd perfected over the years. Now it was my command center. I'd been planning this for 3 months, ever since I'd found the first text message on her phone while she was in the shower. She'd gotten sloppy, leaving her phone face up on the bathroom counter. The message from Colin had been simple. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. That's when I'd started paying attention. Really paying attention. My laptop hummed to life, and I opened the folder labeled Insurance Policy. Inside were dozens of subfolders: financial records, communication logs, photographic evidence, legal documents, and my personal favorite, associates and contacts. Russell Kane had been the easiest to crack. Alyssa's friend from her certification program, the one who'd been feeding her advice about her complicated feelings. What Alyssa didn't know was that Russell had his own complications. Like a wife who thought he was working late 3 nights a week when he was actually at the Riverside Casino, dropping their mortgage payment on poker games. I'd followed Russell twice before I'd approached him. The first time, I'd just wanted to confirm my suspicions. The second time, I'd brought my camera. Now, at 6 in the morning, I was driving to Henderson Freight for what would be my last normal day at work for a while. I'd already put in for vacation time, telling my supervisor I needed to handle some personal business. That was the truth, just not the whole truth. Sandy Bell was already at her desk when I walked into the office, nursing her usual oversized coffee and scrolling through Facebook. Sandy knew everyone in town and had opinions about all of them. She was also the closest thing I had to a friend at work. "You look like garbage, Walker," she said without looking up from her screen. "Rough night?" "You could say that." "Hey, Sandy, what do you know about Colin Mercer?" That got her attention. She swiveled in her chair and raised an eyebrow. "The real estate guy? Why?" "Just curious. He's been sniffing around some property near my neighborhood." Sandy's eyes lit up. She loved gossip more than oxygen. Oh, honey, you don't want to get mixed up with that one. He's slicker than a greased pig and twice as dirty. Word is he's been cutting corners on his developments, using cheap materials and bribing inspectors. Nothing proven, mind you, but where there's smoke. Interesting. What else? Well, he's got a reputation with the ladies, if you know what I mean. Married and divorced twice already. Current girlfriend is some lawyer's wife, according to my sister who works at the bank. Apparently they're not too discreet about it. I kept my expression neutral. Sounds like a real catch. Why the sudden interest in local real estate drama? Like I said, just curious. I headed toward my office. Thanks for the intel, Sandy. Anytime, sugar. You know I live for this stuff. I spent the morning handling routine logistics, but my mind was elsewhere. At lunch, I drove to the Pigeon's Roost, a dive bar on the outskirts of town where Russell liked to grab a beer before heading to the casino. I'd timed it perfectly. He was sitting alone at the bar, staring at his phone with the expression of a man whose world was crumbling. Perfect. Russell Kane? I slid onto the bar stool next to him. I'm Grant Walker, Alyssa's husband. The color drained from his face. Oh, hi, I was just having lunch. I know. Mind if I join you? He looked around the nearly empty bar like he was planning an escape route. Sure, I guess. I ordered a beer and waited for the bartender to move out of earshot. So, Russell, how long have you been helping my wife figure out her feelings? I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. You're the one who introduced her to the concept of a situationship, right? Helped her rationalize having a relationship with another man while she was still married to me? Russell's hand shook as he lifted his beer. Look, Grant, I never meant for things to get complicated. Alyssa was confused, and I just listened. And gave advice, and helped her meet Colin, and provided emotional support while she planned to leave me. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of him walking into the Riverside Casino. Nice hobby you've got there. His eyes went wide. How did you get this picture? Same way I got the others. Same way I found out about your little gambling problem. Same way I learned that your wife thinks you're working overtime to pay for your daughter's college tuition when you're actually blowing her education fund on poker games. Russell set down his beer with a trembling hand. What do you want? Information, cooperation, and maybe a little payback for all the helpful advice you gave my wife. I can't. You can and you will, because if you don't, your wife gets a very interesting package in the mail tomorrow morning. Photos, credit card statements, casino loyalty program records, everything she needs to understand where her daughter's college money really went. Russell stared at me for a long moment. You're not the same guy Alyssa described. No, I'm not. Turns out betrayal brings out sides of people they didn't know existed. So, what's it going to be, Russell? Are you going to help me? Or are you going to explain to your wife why your daughter will be taking out student loans? He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. What do you need to know? Everything. Where they meet, when they meet, what they've planned, and most importantly, where Alyssa has been stashing the things she doesn't want me to find. For the next 30 minutes, Russell spilled everything. The storage unit Alyssa had rented under her maiden name, the joint credit card she'd opened with Colin, the apartment they'd been looking at together, the timeline for when she'd planned to leave me. There's something else, Russell said as I prepared to leave. Something I probably shouldn't tell you. But you're going to anyway. They've been talking about making you look bad, in case you tried to fight the divorce. Colin thinks you might get violent or try to cause problems for them. They've been documenting things. What kind of things? Arguments. Times when you've raised your voice. Alyssa's been keeping a journal, making it sound like you're controlling and potentially dangerous. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. They're building a case against me. I think so. Colin's got money and connections. He knows lawyers, judges, people who can make things difficult for you if they want to. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the bar. Thanks for the heads up, Russell, and the information. What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 months ago. Stop playing defense and start playing offense. That evening, I drove to the storage facility Russell had told me about. Unit 247, rented under Alyssa Trent, her maiden name. The lock was a simple combination model, and Russell had provided the numbers, our anniversary date. Even in her betrayal, Alyssa couldn't resist being sentimental. Inside the unit, I found boxes of expensive jewelry, designer clothes with tags still attached, and electronics I'd never seen before. Gifts from Colin, no doubt. But more interesting were the documents, bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed, copies of our joint financial records, and a notebook filled with Alyssa's handwriting. I opened the notebook and read her version of our marriage. According to her journal, I was controlling, jealous, and prone to angry outbursts. She'd documented every argument we'd had in the past year, but twisted them to make me sound unstable and potentially dangerous. The final entry was dated 2 days ago. Grant is becoming increasingly suspicious and confrontational. I'm worried about what he might do when he finds out about Colin. I need to be prepared to protect myself if he becomes violent. I photographed every page, every document, every receipt. Then I loaded everything into my truck. All of it. Every box, every bag, every piece of evidence she'd been collecting. When I was done, I left a single item in the empty storage unit, a note written on Henderson Freight letterhead. Thanks for the memories. Try harder next time. Your loving husband. Then I changed the combination lock and drove home. Phase 2 was complete, but the real fun was just getting started. Colin Mercer's BMW was parked in the visitors section of Henderson Freight's parking lot when I arrived at work the next morning. He was leaning against the driver's door, checking his phone with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never had to work a real job in his life. I parked my truck in my usual spot and took a moment to study him. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of tan that came from golf courses and vacation homes. Everything about him screamed money and privilege. Everything about him made my teeth itch. Grant Walker? He pushed off from his car as I approached. I'm Colin Mercer. I think we need to talk. Do we? I kept walking toward the building entrance. About what? About your wife. About this situation you've created. I stopped and turned to face him. Situation I've created? That's interesting. Last I checked, I wasn't the one having an affair. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You're having relations with my wife. She's having relations with you. I found out about it and ended my marriage. Simple as basic math. Colin stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. He was maybe 2 inches taller and probably 30 pounds heavier, but it was soft weight, gym membership weight, not working man weight. Look, nobody wanted it to happen this way. Alyssa was going to tell you. When? After you two had figured out how to take me for everything I'm worth? After she'd finished documenting what a terrible husband I am? His confident expression flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the storage unit, or the joint credit card, or the apartment you two have been looking at. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of one of Alyssa's documents. Nice place, by the way. A little pricey for a logistics manager's salary, but perfect for a real estate developer and his new girlfriend. Colin's face went pale. How did you get that? Amazing what people leave lying around when they think they're smarter than everyone else. I put my phone away. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Unlike some people, I can't spend my morning harassing other men's wives. Ex-wife, Colin said. Alyssa left you, remember? Temporarily, but don't worry, I'm sure you two will figure something out, assuming you can afford that apartment on just your income. I started walking toward the building again, but Colin grabbed my arm. What's that supposed to mean? I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Touch me again and find out. He let go immediately, but his jaw was clenched. You can't freeze her out financially. She has rights. She has the rights I choose to give her. and right now, I'm not feeling particularly generous. I pulled out a small device that looked like a car key remote. By the way, you might want to check on your car. Colin's eyes widened and he spun around. His BMW's lights were flashing, and I could hear the faint sound of the alarm going off. What did you do? Nothing illegal. Just a little electronic interference. Should stop in a few minutes. I held up the device. Amazing what you can buy online these days. Completely legal too, since I'm not actually breaking into anything. Colin ran back to his car, fumbling with his keys while the alarm continued to wail. Several of my coworkers had come outside to see what the commotion was about, including Sandy, who was recording the whole thing on her phone. "Having trouble with your car, sir?" Sandy called out sweetly. "Maybe you should call a mechanic." I walked into the building, leaving Colin to deal with his malfunctioning BMW and the growing crowd of amused warehouse workers. Through the window, I watched him finally get the alarm to stop, only to discover that his car wouldn't start. My phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. "What did you do to Colin's car?" I texted back, "Nothing. Maybe he should buy American next time." 20 minutes later, Sandy knocked on my office door. "That was beautiful, Walker. Absolutely beautiful. Who was that clown?" "Just someone who's been sniffing around my neighborhood. Thought I'd give him some friendly advice about property values." "Well, whatever you did, it worked. He had to call a tow truck. Cost him $200 just to get his fancy car started." Sandy grinned. "Word of advice, though. Next time you want to mess with someone's car, do it when I'm not recording. Makes for better plausible deniability." "Thanks for the tip." "Anytime, sugar. Just remember your friends when this all goes to court." After Sandy left, I called Alyssa's office. Her boss, Mr. Kearns, was a stiff, humorless man who cared more about his law firm's reputation than his employees' personal lives. "Mr. Kearns? This is Grant Walker, Alyssa's husband. I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know about a situation that might affect your firm." "What kind of situation, Mr. Walker?" "Well, sir, it seems my wife has been using company resources to conduct a personal relationship with one of your clients. I have documentation showing she's been meeting with Colin Mercer during business hours, using company phones and computers to arrange personal meetings." There was a long pause. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Walker." "Yes, sir, it is. I wouldn't make it if I didn't have proof. I'm planning to file for divorce, and my attorney suggested I should inform you since it might come up during discovery." "I see. And you have documentation of this alleged behavior?" "Photos, phone records, email logs, everything my attorney needs to establish a pattern of misconduct." I let that sink in. "Of course, I'm hoping we can keep this quiet, for everyone's sake." "Of course. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Walker. I'll look into the matter immediately." After I hung up, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Kearns would have Alyssa in his office within the hour, demanding explanations she couldn't provide without admitting to the affair. Her job, which she was so proud of, would be in jeopardy by the end of the day. My phone rang. Alyssa. "Grant, what did you tell Mr. Kearns?" "The truth. Something you should try sometime. He's threatening to suspend me pending an investigation. He says you have evidence that I've been using company resources for personal business." "Do you deny it?" Silence. "That's what I thought. Maybe you should have considered the consequences before you decided to conduct your situationship on company time." "This is insane, Grant. You're destroying my life over a mistake." "I'm not destroying anything, Alyssa. I'm just stopping you from destroying mine. There's a difference." "What do you want? Money? The house? What will it take for you to stop this?" "I want you to understand what you threw away. I want you to feel what I felt when I found those text messages. I want you to know what it's like to have someone you trust betray you. I never meant to hurt you. But you did it anyway. And now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up and went back to work. But I wasn't done. Not even close. That evening, I drove to Colin's high-rise apartment building. The doorman, a friendly guy named Pete, who I'd chatted with during my surveillance, recognized me from my previous visits. "Evening, Mr. Walker. Here to see Mr. Mercer again?" "Actually, Pete, I wanted to thank you for your help with my investigation. Turns out my suspicions about my wife were correct." Pete's face fell. "Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that. I had a feeling something wasn't right when I saw them together." "Yeah, well, these things happen. I just wanted to give you this as a thank you for being straight with me." I handed him an envelope containing $200 in cash. "And maybe ask one more favor." "What kind of favor?" "Mr. Mercer's been harassing me at my workplace. I'm worried he might escalate things. If he asks about me or if my wife shows up here, could you give me a call? Just so I know what I'm dealing with?" Pete pocketed the envelope. "Absolutely, Mr. Walker. Nobody likes a home wrecker." I gave Pete my phone number and headed home. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a police car parked across the street. A few minutes later, Detective Mark Heller knocked on my door. "Evening, Grant. Got a minute?" "Sure, Mark. Come on in." I'd known Heller for years. We'd played softball together before I got married. "What's up?" "Got a complaint today. Colin Mercer says you've been harassing him and his girlfriend." "His girlfriend? You mean my wife?" Heller sighed. "Yeah, I heard about that. Sorry, man. That's rough. Thanks. But I haven't been harassing anyone. I confronted the guy who's been sleeping with my wife. Once, in a public parking lot, with witnesses." "What about his car trouble this morning?" "What about it? Cars break down all the time, especially foreign cars." Heller studied my face. "Grant, I've known you for 10 years. You're not the type to cause trouble. But this situation, it can make good people do stupid things. Just be careful, okay? Don't give this guy any ammunition to use against you." "I appreciate the concern, Mark, but I'm handling this the right way. Through lawyers and divorce courts, not parking lot confrontations." "Good. Keep it that way." Heller headed for the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Mercer struck me as a real piece of work. But that doesn't mean you should do anything that might come back to bite you." After he left, I sat on my couch and opened a beer. Phase 3 was in motion. Alyssa's job was in jeopardy. Colin was looking over his shoulder, and everyone in town was starting to pick sides. But I was just getting warmed up. The construction site behind the old Walmart had been abandoned for 2 years, ever since the developer ran out of money halfway through building what was supposed to be a shopping complex. Now it was just concrete foundations, steel beams, and shadows. Perfect for a private conversation. I'd sent Colin a text from a burner phone, claiming to be a potential investor who'd heard about his financial troubles. The message suggested a meeting at the construction site to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement, away from prying eyes. I'd signed it, a friend. Colin's BMW pulled into the gravel lot at exactly 9 p.m. I watched from behind a concrete barrier as he got out of his car, looking around nervously. He was carrying what looked like a briefcase, probably filled with financial documents to impress his mysterious potential investor. I waited until he was halfway across the construction site before I stepped out of the shadows. "Evening, Colin." He spun around, nearly dropping his briefcase. "What are you doing here? Where's the investor?" "You're looking at him. I've been investing quite a bit of time and energy into learning about you lately." Colin's eyes darted around the empty construction site, probably calculating his chances of making it back to his car before I could catch him. "This is harassment, Grant. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. Tell them you came to an abandoned construction site at night to meet with a mysterious investor who contacted you through an untraceable phone number. I'm sure that'll go over well." He pulled out his phone, but I held up my hand. "Before you make that call, you might want to hear what I have to say. It's about your financial situation, your real financial situation." That got his attention. "What are you talking about?" I'm talking about the 3 projects you've got stalled because your investors pulled out. I'm talking about the lawsuit from the Peterson family over that foundation crack in their new house. I'm talking about the second mortgage you took out on your condo to keep your business afloat. Colin's face went white. How could you possibly know about any of that? Amazing what you can find in public records when you know where to look. Business filings, court documents, property records. It's all there if you're willing to dig. I pulled out a manila folder. Want to see what else I found? You're bluffing. I opened the folder and pulled out a document. Peterson versus Mercer Development, filed 3 weeks ago. They're claiming the foundation of their new house is cracking because you used substandard concrete to save money. They're seeking $200,000 in damages. Colin snatched the paper from my hand. Where did you get this? Court clerk's office, public record, just like the notice of default on your business loan, and the lien against your condo, and the complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized how exposed he was. What do you want? I want you to understand something, Colin. You picked the wrong man's wife to steal. You thought I was just some blue-collar nobody who'd roll over and let you take everything I've worked for. You were wrong. Alyssa came to me, Grant. I didn't pursue her. Maybe, but you sure didn't turn her away, did you? Even when you knew she was married. Even when you knew she was planning to screw me over financially. Colin straightened up, trying to regain some of his earlier arrogance. She's not happy with you, Grant. She hasn't been happy for years. I just gave her an option. An option? Is that what you call it when you help a married woman plan to take her husband for everything he's worth? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out another document. Joint credit card application. Alyssa Trent and Colin Mercer. Applied for 2 months ago. $25,000 limit. Want to guess what she's been charging on it? Colin's jaw clenched. That's between Alyssa and me. Actually, it's between Alyssa and the credit card company now. See, I had a very interesting conversation with their fraud department this morning. Turns out when someone applies for credit using a married woman's maiden name without disclosing her actual marital status, it raises red flags. You can't do that. I already did. They've frozen the account pending investigation. Hope you two didn't have any big purchases planned. Colin took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. You're going to regret this, Grant. I have connections in this town, lawyers, judges, people who can make your life very difficult. Bring them on. I've got nothing to hide. Can you say the same? That's when Colin made his mistake. He lunged at me, swinging his briefcase like a weapon. I'd been expecting something like this. Men like Colin weren't used to being cornered, and they tended to lash out when their carefully constructed world started crumbling. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and stuck out my foot. Colin went down hard, his briefcase flying open and scattering papers across the gravel. He rolled over, holding his shoulder and glaring at me with pure hatred. You're going to pay for this, he gasped. Both of you. Alyssa and I will take you for everything you've got. Funny thing about that, Colin. Alyssa doesn't have access to anything anymore. And after tonight, I don't think you're going to be in any position to help her. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. I'd been recording our entire conversation, including his attempt to attack me with his briefcase. Assault with a weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, harassment. Should I keep going? Colin struggled to his feet, still holding his shoulder. You set me up. I gave you enough rope to hang yourself. You did the rest. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and smiled. Speaking of rope, you might want to check your voicemail when you get home tonight. What are you talking about? Russell Kane sends his regards. Turns out he's not as loyal to Alyssa as she thought. Amazing what a man will do to protect his family. Colin's face went from pale to green. What did he tell you? Everything. The apartment you two picked out. The timeline for when Alyssa was going to file for divorce. The story you two cooked up about me being controlling and potentially violent. I held up my phone again. All recorded, all documented, all ready to be presented to a judge if necessary. Colin stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. It wasn't a happy sound. You think you've won, don't you? You think you've outsmarted us? I think I've evened the odds. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Grant. Alyssa's not the woman you think she is. This whole thing, this affair, it's not her first time. You're just the latest in a long line of men she's used and discarded. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you talking about? Ask her about Denver. Ask her about the job she had before she moved here. Ask her about the married man she was involved with there and what happened when his wife found out. Colin picked up his scattered papers and stuffed them back into his briefcase. You want to play games, Grant? Fine. But remember, I tried to warn you. When this all comes crashing down, and it will, don't say I didn't try to tell you the truth about your precious wife. He limped back to his car, leaving me standing alone in the abandoned construction site with more questions than answers. I drove home in silence, Colin's words echoing in my head. Denver, a married man, a pattern of behavior that went back further than I'd imagined. When I got home, I found Russell Kane sitting on my front porch. We need to talk, he said. About what? About what I didn't tell you this afternoon, about why I really helped Alyssa, and about what she's planning to do to you next. I unlocked my front door and gestured for him to come inside. This better be good, Russell. It's not good, Grant. It's not good at all. Russell sat at my kitchen table, nervously shredding a napkin while I made coffee. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate given what I knew about his gambling debts and marital problems. Start talking, I said, setting a cup in front of him. Alyssa didn't just meet Colin by accident, Russell began. She targeted him, researched him, found out about his financial problems and his weakness for married women. I sat down across from him. Keep going. She's done this before, Grant. In Denver, like Colin said, but also in Phoenix before that, and Sacramento before that. She finds men who are financially vulnerable, gets them emotionally invested, then bleeds them dry. You're saying my wife is some kind of professional con artist? Not professional exactly, but experienced. She has a pattern. Marry a stable guy, build up joint assets, then find a mark with money problems who's desperate enough to believe she loves him. She gets the mark to help her hide assets and plan her exit strategy, then she disappears with everything. I stared at Russell, trying to process what he was telling me. How do you know all this? Because I helped her research you before she moved to town. She hired me to do background checks, financial records, employment history. I thought it was just normal due diligence for someone who'd been burned before. Russell's hands were shaking now. I didn't realize I was helping her plan a con job. Why are you telling me this now? Because she's planning something bigger than just taking your money, Grant. She and Colin have been working on a way to frame you for domestic violence. They want to make you look dangerous so they can get a restraining order and force you out of your own house. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. How? They've been staging incidents, arguments in public places where they can get witnesses. Colin's been calling in complaints to the police about harassment. They're building a paper trail to make you look unstable. Detective Heller already came to see me about Colin's complaint. That's just the beginning. They're planning to escalate it. Alyssa's going to claim you threatened her, maybe even hit her. Colin will back up her story, say he witnessed it. With her journal entries and the police reports, it'll be enough to get you arrested. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 8 years. When? Soon, maybe tomorrow. She's been practicing her story, working on the details. Colin's been coaching her on what to say to make it sound believable. And you know this how? Russell looked down at his hands. Because they asked me to be a witness, to say I saw you grab her arm or push her during one of our conversations. They offered to pay off my gambling debts if I'd testify against you. I turned around to face him. And what did you tell them? I told them I'd think about it. But I can't do it, Grant. I've done a lot of terrible things, but I won't help destroy an innocent man's life. Even if it means your wife finds out about the gambling? Even then, some things are more important than money. I sat back down and studied Russell's face. What do you want from me? Help. Protection. A way out of this mess that doesn't end with me losing everything. And in return? I'll testify against them. I'll tell the truth about what they're planning. I'll give you copies of everything. The research I did on you, the conversations I recorded, the evidence they've been manufacturing. Russell pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it on the table. It's all there. Everything you need to prove they've been planning this from the beginning. I picked up the flash drive and turned it over in my hands. Why should I trust you? You've been lying to me from the start. Because I'm tired of being their puppet. Because I'm tired of helping people destroy each other. And because you're the only person who can stop them. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and started scrolling through the files. Financial records, background checks, recorded phone calls, copies of Alyssa's fake journal entries. It was all there, just like Russell had promised. This is enough to send them both to prison, I said. Maybe, if you can prove it before they frame you for assault. But once you're arrested, once there's a restraining order, it'll be your word against theirs. Then we need to move fast. We? You want my help, Russell? You want protection from what's coming? Then you're going to help me end this once and for all. Russell nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Call Alyssa. Tell her you've changed your mind, that you're willing to be their witness. Set up a meeting for tomorrow night. Where? The Riverside Motel, room 237. Tell them you want to go over your testimony one more time before they make their move. What are you planning, Grant? I'm planning to give them exactly what they want. A confrontation, a scene, a chance to prove how dangerous and unstable I am. Russell looked confused. But if you give them what they want, they'll incriminate themselves. See, the thing about con artists is they get overconfident. They start believing their own lies. Tomorrow night, Alyssa and Colin are going to confess to everything, and we're going to record every word. How can you be sure they'll confess? Because I'm going to make them think they've won. I'm going to walk into that motel room looking defeated and desperate, ready to beg for mercy. They won't be able to resist gloating about how clever they've been. Russell was quiet for a long moment. This is risky, Grant. If something goes wrong, something already went wrong. 8 years ago when I married a woman who saw me as nothing more than a mark to be conned. Tomorrow night, I'm going to fix that mistake. I walked Russell to the door and watched him drive away. Then I went back to my laptop and started planning the final act of this twisted drama. By the time I went to bed, I had everything mapped out, the timing, the equipment, the backup plans. Tomorrow night, Alyssa and Colin would finally get the confrontation they'd been planning for. They just wouldn't get the outcome they were expecting. The Riverside Motel was the kind of place where people went to conduct business they didn't want anyone to know about. Faded paint, broken neon signs, and a parking lot full of cars that had seen better days. Perfect for what I had planned. I'd arrived 2 hours early to set up. Room 237 was on the second floor, overlooking the parking lot. I'd rented the room next door under a fake name and spent the afternoon installing wireless cameras and microphones. Everything would be recorded from multiple angles, with backup files automatically uploaded to a secure server. At exactly 8 p.m., Russell's car pulled into the parking lot, followed a few minutes later by Colin's BMW. I watched from my surveillance room as they gathered outside room 237, talking in hushed voices before Russell used his key to let them in. I gave them 10 minutes to get comfortable, then walked across the parking lot and knocked on their door. "Come in," Alyssa called. "It's open." I stepped into the room and found them arranged like actors on a stage. Alyssa sat on the bed, looking nervous but determined. Colin stood by the window, trying to project confidence. Russell hovered near the door, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Hello, Alyssa. Colin. I closed the door behind me. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Grant. Alyssa's voice was carefully controlled. Russell said you wanted to talk about working something out. I do. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I think it's time we found a way to resolve things that works for everyone. Colin stepped forward. What kind of resolution are you talking about? The kind where I don't lose everything I've worked for, and you two don't end up in prison for fraud and conspiracy. Alyssa's eyes flashed. Prison? Grant, you're being dramatic. Am I? Joint credit cards under false names, hidden assets, manufactured evidence of domestic violence. That's serious criminal behavior, Alyssa. You can't prove any of that. I pulled out my phone and played a recording of Colin's voice from our meeting at the construction site. Alyssa and I will take you for everything you've got. Colin's face went red. You recorded me without my consent. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. We were in a public place and you were threatening me. I had every right to record our conversation for my own protection. I played another clip, this one of Alyssa's voice from a phone call Russell had recorded. Grant's getting suspicious. We need to move faster on the domestic violence angle. Alyssa stood up from the bed. Russell, you recorded me? You betrayed me? Russell finally looked at her. You were going to destroy an innocent man's life, Alyssa. I couldn't be part of that. You pathetic little worm. Do you have any idea what you've done? He saved himself from being an accessory to fraud, I said. Smart move, actually. Colin moved toward me, his fists clenched. You think you're so clever, don't you, Grant? You think you've outsmarted us? I think I've evened the playing field. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Alyssa's not going to just walk away from this. She never does. Alyssa shot Colin a warning look, but it was too late. What do you mean she never does? I asked. Nothing. He doesn't mean anything, Alyssa said quickly. But Colin was angry now, and angry people say stupid things. Tell him, Alyssa. Tell him about Denver, about Phoenix, about all the other husbands you've bled dry over the years. Shut up, Colin. Why? He's going to find out anyway. Might as well hear it from us. Colin turned to me with a nasty smile. Your wife is a professional, Grant. She's been running this con for 15 years. You're just the latest mark. I looked at Alyssa, who was staring at Colin with pure hatred. Is that true? It doesn't matter what's true. What matters is what we can prove in court. Actually, what matters is what I can prove. And thanks to Russell, I can prove everything. I pulled out the flash drive Russell had given me. Financial records, background checks, recorded conversations, copies of your fake journal entries. It's all here. Alyssa's composure finally cracked. You can't use any of that. It was obtained illegally. By Russell, who was working for you at the time. That makes it evidence of your criminal conspiracy, not illegally obtained surveillance. Colin grabbed Alyssa's arm. We need to leave. Now. Let go of me. Alyssa jerked away from him. This is your fault. If you hadn't gotten greedy, if you hadn't pushed so hard for the domestic violence angle, my fault? You're the one who came to me with this plan. You're the one who said it would be easy money. Easy money? I laughed. Colin, you do realize she's been playing you just as much as she's been playing me, right? What are you talking about? Show him the bank records, Russell. Russell pulled out a folder and handed it to Colin. She's been moving money to accounts you don't know about. The joint credit card you two opened? She's been using it to fund her own escape plan. Colin flipped through the papers, his face growing paler with each page. Alyssa, what is this? It's insurance, in case things went wrong. Insurance? You've been stealing from me. I've been protecting myself, something you should have thought about before you got involved with a married woman. Colin threw the papers at her. You lying witch. You've been using me from the beginning. Of course I have. Did you really think I was going to run away with you? A broke real estate developer with a gambling problem and a history of failed relationships? Gambling problem? Colin looked confused. Russell cleared his throat. Actually, that was me. I may have mixed up some of your personal details when I was briefing Alyssa. The room fell silent as everyone processed what Russell had just said. Then, Colin started laughing, a bitter, angry sound. This is perfect. Just perfect. I've been played by a professional con artist and her gambling addict accomplice, and I'm probably going to prison for it. Not probably, I said. Definitely, unless we can work something out. Alyssa turned to me, her mask finally completely off. What do you want, Grant? I want you gone. Both of you. Out of my life, out of my town, out of my state. I want signed confessions, full restitution of any money you've taken, and a promise that I'll never see either of you again. And if we refuse, then I turn everything over to the police and let the courts sort it out. Your choice. Colin looked at Alyssa. How many other men are there? How many other marks you've conned over the years? Does it matter? It matters to the FBI. Financial fraud across state lines is a federal crime. The statute of limitations doesn't run out for a long time. Alyssa sat back down on the bed, suddenly looking very tired. What do you want us to sign? I pulled out a document I'd prepared. Full confession, agreement to restitution, and a promise to leave the state within 72 hours. And if we sign this? I keep the evidence to myself. Unless you ever contact me again, or try to run this con on someone else in a state where I have connections. Colin read over the document. This is basically a confession to multiple felonies. Yes, it is, but it's also your get-out-of-jail-free card, assuming you honor the terms. Alyssa looked at me with something that might have been respect. You really have thought of everything, haven't you? I had good teachers. You and Colin showed me exactly how ruthless people can be when they want something. I just learned the lesson better than you expected. She signed the document without another word. Colin hesitated for a moment, then signed as well. Russell will be my witness that you signed these voluntarily, I said, collecting the papers. He'll also be keeping copies, just in case something happens to me. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Alyssa? Next time you decide to con someone, maybe don't pick someone who actually pays attention to details. It's a bad habit of mine. I left them in that motel room, 3 people who'd tried to destroy my life now facing the consequences of their choices. By the time I got home, I'd already received confirmation that the signed confessions had been uploaded to my secure server. The next morning, I watched from my kitchen window as a moving truck pulled up to Colin's building. 2 days later, Russell told me that Alyssa had cleaned out her apartment and disappeared. I never saw either of them again. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, uncontested, with full restitution of all marital assets. I kept the house, the savings, and most importantly, my self-respect. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things, if I think I went too far, or if I should have just walked away and started over. The answer is no. Alyssa and Colin made their choices when they decided to target me. They planned to destroy my life, steal everything I'd worked for, and probably send me to prison on false charges. I just made sure they failed, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is exactly what they deserved.